I bought this video camera from a garage sale and this is what I found on it. Hello everyone. My name is Garrett and I'm posting this as a plea for answers. I watched and wrote down key events recorded on a Sony Handycam and sent off the footage to be developed. I will post all of it once it's back in my possession, but for now I have to tell anyone who will listen. Has anyone heard of the Dogwood Family Farms? It's located in Nanaimo, British Columbia, or at least it was. After I bought this from a garage sale, I drove back to try and ask the original owner about it, but the once big house on farmland with a decent amount of animals was gone. Not like burnt down or abandoned, but as if nothing was there at all but just undeveloped land with no hope of a for sale sign ever sitting on the top of the driveway. Just trees. Everywhere. The first video opens up with the two people that I'd come to obsess over after watching them throughout these videos. Jacob, the younger brother, struggles and opens the lens cap while staring down the barrel of the camera and says, "Ha, got it." Then he points the camera at his older brother Riley, who is driving. Riley says, "You finally figure out how to work that relic?" And Jacob laughs and says, "How the fuck did our parents ever figure out how to work this thing? Take a look." Jacob shoves the camera into Riley's face. "God damn it, man, I'm trying to get us there in one piece." Jacob sets the camera on the dash of the car and says, "Okay, Riley and I packed all of our shit, and we're moving to a farm." Riley interrupts, "In the middle of nowhere?" "Yeah, it does seem to be a bit longer of a drive than anticipated, but a free room for two and all we gotta do is help some hick wrangle cattle and duel at high noon. I'm down to drive for hours." They said they were moving to a place called Dogwood Family Farms. The ad had no phone number but just an address and what seemed to be a handwritten free room, help wanted, and that was enough for them to pack up their few boxes and bags to the brim and move whatever lifetime these 20-something-year-olds had lived to somewhere new. Their dog, Shiloh, accompanied them as every man's best friend should, and they started to talk about the lay of the land as they were driving. "Every tree looks the same, are we even moving?" Riley joked. Jacob said, "My map says we're almost there, it's your next left." They drove until they hit the stump with the sign that read Dogwood Family Farms. Gravel and sticks crunched under the tires as they lay silent on what they were approaching. The camera is pointed down at the floor of their car floor and Riley mentions how long the straight driveway is, but you can see the house at the end of it. The closer they get, he tells Jacob to record it and he raises the camera. The house looked up, kept but condemned, with gutters painted white and siding still straight and intact, but old barn boards and tattered blue tarp covered the windows. Although the closer they got, it was just an illusion. The old camera they are using plays tricks on the eyes a lot throughout the whole tape because of its low quality. The car clicked in the park and Jacob was pointing the camera at the house. It looked like a shell of what it was. Bright colors faded over time and mildew dripped mossy dirt around the whole house. "No way this is the place," Jacob said. "There's nothing else here, man." "It's gotta be it," said Riley as he stepped out of the car. Jacob took a second of self-convincing, listening to Shiloh lightly whine, and refused to step out of the car. The camera cuts and points at their shoes on a faded, well-used welcome mat. The vignette tells me Jacob is hiding it under his sweater so the owner doesn't see it. Riley clanged the brass knocker and waited 5 seconds after Jacob knocks it. "I just knocked it, you don't have to knock it too," Jacob bickered. "Shut up, I'll knock it again if I want," Riley replied. Jacob slapped his arm down when he reached for it. "Who is it?" shouted from the other side of the door. "Hi, I am Mr. Dogwood. I'm Jacob and this is my brother Riley." And Riley interrupted, "We saw your ad for a free room, we're hoping it's still available." The door moved slightly and gave some way as if something was barricading the other side. The sound of a series of locks ran down the crack of the door and you can hear the door handle twist and open. The boy's feet slightly stepped back and a new set of old boots joined the downward-facing shot. His stained, almost dark gray hand reached out and he accompanied it with a raspy-voiced "Clive." Riley shook his hand and exchanged names and Clive's hand slowly shifted to Jacob. Not thinking, Jacob drops the camera from under his sweatshirt, reaching to shake Clive's hand. The camera points up from their feet, giving Clive a vague silhouette as the camera adjusts to staring at the sky's light exposure. He towers over the boys and his arms swing up, banging his hands on his head repeatedly. And oh, no cameras. Jacob, fumbling, picks up the handy cam. Sorry sir, and Jacob lightly pleaded. Clive yells under his breath like a toddler trying to get his way and says, "Don't call me that." Riley steps in between and says, "Okay, it's okay. We're sorry, Clive, we're sorry, put it away." "Put it away," pleaded Clive. This last shot ends with Riley quickly replying, Okay, Jacob, put the fucking camera away, man." The next shot started with Jacob and Riley following Clive around the back of the house. "Sorry boys, I can get a little paranoid around cameras," he said as long blades of grass and hidden sticks crunched under Clive's boots until he stopped at a storm door for a basement. "It's no problem, we're just working on a home video to show our future selves," Jacob said. "Yeah, we found videos our parents took of us as kids and maybe we'll do it for our kids one day, haha." Riley chuckled nervously. As Clive fiddled with a ring of keys to unlock the outside of the door, he stops and says, "They'll never see a need to look back until I finally share a glance with something that looked back to me." "Ahokane," Riley said. The lock clicks open and the chains Clive ran through the steel handles are pulled out, simulating a loud sound over the camera's microphone, like a group of cicada bugs flying through a thunderstorm. The two doors attached to the bottom of the failing foundation swung open from Clive's grip, and he nonchalantly waved his hand down the wooden stairs into the dark, dingy basement. Riley and Jacob don't go down immediately, and Clive says, "Jesus boys, take off your purse," and they watch him walk down the stairs and disappear into the darkness. Jacob follows Riley creaking into the basement, and they mention later the smell of stale dirt surrounding the claustrophobic area. One singular light bulb swings around as Clive pulls the beaded string to turn it on, and remains the only source of good light aside from a small foggy basement window that's too high up the wall for the boys to look out of. The light reveals an old stained beige couch in front of an analog TV and VCR. The bathroom is just as small as you'd expect, with the sink being attached to the back of the toilet like what you'd see in prison living quarters. The camera, being hidden still, swings over as Clive says, "It's not the Taj Mahal, but if you boys are willing to help around the farm, it's yours as long as you can turn a shovel." He claps his hands together making a loud slap and says, "Okay, good, see you 2 in the morning," and he walked out and closed the doors. A piece of my mind thought I was gonna hear that awful noise of chains being dragged through metal handles again, but he just walked away and left the boys in their new humble abode. The camera opens with a close-up of Shiloh's goofy face, and Riley is using a fake baby voice. "Who's a good boy?" "Shiloh's a good boy," and rubs his belly. Jacob says from out of the shot, "Dude, who the hell are we living under? That was the weirdest shit I've ever seen. He's an old man clearly. I'm sure he'll warm up to us." "He's probably been living here for a long time by himself," Riley said. The floorboards creak above their head and you can see how close they are as the dust falls from above. Jacob says, "You're probably right, but I couldn't help but get a little spooked when he lost his cool. Yeah, I was pretty scared too, but when you stop and take a step back from our situation, from the outside he's just a weird guy who has a free room and needs some help. I'm sure there's been a few people come and go from here. I saw shoes in the bedroom closet too small to fit Clive, so I assume help has come and gone for him," Riley explained. "Well, alright, that does make sense. You and Shiloh cool on the couch for tonight?" Jacob asked. "Yeah man, for sure. Try and get some sleep, alright?" Riley answered. The camera time reads 2:22 a.m. and the shot is accompanied by a close-up of Jacob's face as he fumbles to turn the light on and points it at himself and whispers, "I only got like 3 hours of sleep. I don't know if the microphone can hear this, but Clive is crying and just stomping around up there. I feel like I want to say something, but he could be sleepwalking and wailing. Here, try and listen." He holds the camera up closer to the ceiling and you can finally hear what sounds like a man's ugly crying and the slaps of bare feet pacing around frantically. "Okay, I'm gonna see if Riley can hear it too." Jacob gets up and quietly walks out of his door, and he sees Riley sleeping but Shiloh is sitting up, staring at a wall and lightly whining. Jacob walks past Riley and accompanies Shiloh. The light of the camera reveals drywall mud lazily covering the cracks of the door. "What the hell? I didn't notice this," Jacob said as he set the camera down and Shiloh walked behind him. He lightly pushes on the plaster where the doorknob would be and it crumbles around his hand. He grips the door and slowly pulls until the cracks around the door reveal themselves. "What are you doing?" Riley said as he woke up. "Dude, listen," the camera lay on the floor and Riley could just barely hear the wailing. "Okay? So why are you putting holes in the wall?" Riley said, "Your dog was whining at this covered up door and I guess curiosity got the best of me." Clive cries slowly and it sounds like he stops walking around. Jacob grabs the camera and points it inside the crack of the door and pulls out the side screen to see what's on the other side. The shot is dimly lit but visible are concrete stairs. At the bottom of them are metal anchors and chains attached to a small collar or something, leading up to the rectangle yellow light of the closed door to Clive's house. Jacob zooms in, looking around the top of the crack and panning down to the bottom. He fumbles the camera when Clive stomps towards his front door leading outside. It sends a jump up both the boys when he screams like a grizzly bear and feels his footsteps barreling towards them. "What the fuck is he doing?" Riley said, "I don't know. Give me a second." Jacob quickly clicked the last 5-second playback button and slowed it right down towards the last frame of the video. The only shadow around the yellow light was at the bottom and the handycam's flashlight revealed the odd green reflection that accompanies eyes when photographed. Pressed against the floor peering down the stairs at the then mud-over door was Clive's haunting straight stare. Now he's outside the steel door and Riley quickly throws a blanket over the camera, blinding the shot, but not the microphone. The doors are heard swinging open and Clive yells, "What did I say?" as he stomps down the wooden stairs. "What do you mean?" Riley said, "The fucking camera. Where is it?" Clive demanded. "We were just using a flashlight to find another room." "Clive, I swear, don't videotape anything. That's when it happens. It can't happen again." Clive cries. It won't," Jacob said. Silence accompanies the fleece blanket covering the lens. Clive sniffles and walks up to the door and closes it behind him. "Is that another symptom of fucking loneliness?" Jacob whispered rhetorically and he uncovers the camera and that's when the shot ends. The next morning came and the boys heard Clive banging on the outside of their entryway to wake them up. They were up before then as the timestamp indicated. Jacob is whispering a confessional to the camera. "It's 6:37 am and I can hear Clive outside. I'm going to hide my camera somewhere in case he freaks out again. Clive is just weird enough to feel the need to document him but unpredictable to a point, so I have to be careful." Riley, Jacob, and Shiloh walk in the field toward the barn, and mooing can be heard coming from the stalls, and when they arrive inside, Clive is shoveling hay with a pitchfork into their feeding area. "Morning, Clive. What's first on the agenda?" Riley says. Clive replies, "Trickery," and he pulls his air gun from behind a low wooden wall and slowly but securely presses it to the unsuspecting heifer's forehead. Pressure releases from the hole on the side of the air gun and the cow falls on its side, stunned. "Grab the blade quick." They only stay stunned for about 20 seconds. The camera is shaking around as the boys scramble and Jacob picks it up and tries handing it to Clive. No, I gotta bring in the next one. Cut its throat so she drains in that hole in the floor." Clive says. "What?" "I can't do that," Jacob said. He turned his body and camera over to Riley as his shocked demeanor left him stiff in a standing paralyzed state. Clive yelled, "Now quick," as the cow started to twitch and wake up before it wakes up. Jacob quickly stepped over and grabbed the cow's ear, pressing her head against the ground. Its golf ball-sized eye opened in front of the camera lens and heavy breathing was coming from both Jacob and the animal. A last-ditch beg comes from the cow as it moos in distress and its white iris is visible looking up at Jacob and its eyes water. Jacob, holding the tip of the blade against the cow's jugular, quietly cries, fuck, I'm sorry," and a bucket's worth of blood is heard flowing from the cow as its eye closes and its life force fades. "Jesus, boys, take off your purse. You want to eat, don't ya?" Clive said as he opened the gate for the next cow. The next 2 hours of unedited footage consisted of the boys feeling forced to take turns and lighten each other's burdens. The looks on their faces tell me they've never killed anything or been hunting. A slice of childlike innocence that held on to the matters of life and death faded away and they learned the reality of the circle of life. Walking out of the barn to take a break, the boys followed Clive out to a table that held 3 glasses of milk, a bag of roast beef, A bag of bread and a bottle of mustard sat open and inviting to nearby flies. "Best get to your food before the bugs do," Clive said as he carelessly drank his milk. Light streams of dairy fell down the corners of his mouth and soaked into his denim overalls. The boys quietly made their sandwiches and sipped their milk, knowing what it takes to bring the farm to the table. Chewing sounds overtake the audio as silence is broken by Clive asking, "You boys like movies?" The chewing stops and Riley says, "Why yeah. What about you?" "Not much else to do around here. There's good and goddamn chance I've seen every movie out there," Clive replied. "What's the last one you've seen?" Jacob asked. It was that new one that just came out." "Oh, what is it?" Clive asked himself, banging his palm against his forehead. "Forrest Gump?" He remembered. The boys looked at each other confused. "The timestamp tells me it's 2010, August 9. Does this mean Clive hasn't left or seen anything outside this farm since 1996? That can't be right. I understand self-sustainability, but there have to be other amenities he would need in the past decade and then some, right?" The boys played along and Riley said, "Oh yeah, I love that dash." Jacob moved and accidentally clicked the record button and it ended abruptly. The date on the camera indicates it's been a few days and sits on the dash of the car, pointing out the windshield at a red light. "Honestly, it feels nice getting out of there," Jacob said. "Yeah, no shit," Riley replied. "I gotta get some artificial processed foods in me. I think my body's in shock," Riley chuckled. They pull into a gas station and grab a 12-pack of Twisted Tea, a bottle of White Lighting vodka accompanied with orange juice and snacks. They sarcastically asked the clerk, "Anything fun to do around other than watch the trees grow?" Smiling, the worker said, "Haha, yeah, it gets pretty boring around here. Why do you ask? Are you guys new to town?" The boys replied, "Yeah, we just moved into the Dogwood farm," and the clerk said, "Oh yeah, that's nice. They're responsible for practically all of these boring trees you boys see." The boys were confused and asked, "What do you mean?" "Well, not a lot of us have heard from Clive in a while, but his old man was friends with mine, and geez, I guess I haven't seen him in a good 10 or 12 years. Anyways, I'm getting off track. His dad and grandpa started planting dogwood trees all around this town right after they were declared protected." "Protected?" Riley said. "Yup, from the top leaf to the dirt that surrounds the roots," the clerk answered. "Wow, that must have been a lot of work for them," said Jacob. They always made quick work of it staying out of the public eye, seeing as the news always had questions." "You know what? I might drive down and come see Clive after work," the clerk said. "Good luck. He hasn't even let us come close to the inside of his house. Just our dungeon suite," Riley said. "I'm getting used to the basement. Honestly, it feels safer than outside sometimes." They shared a laugh with the clerk. "I'm Fred," he said. "I'm Riley. This is my brother Jacob. It's good to meet someone else in this town." It's 7:38 p.m. and the boys are sharing a joint outside, and Riley lets Shiloh out to go pee. "What's tomorrow again?" Jacob asked. "Friday," Riley said, taking a long inhale and holding smoke in his lungs. "It doesn't matter, I think we work all through the weekend," he said as he let out his breath. Headlights shine down the driveway and tires can be heard rolling through the gravel. Fred steps out of the car and shuts the door, waving at Riley and Jacob before walking to Clive's front door and knocking. He seems like a nice guy but doesn't listen. "He's not just gonna invite him in," Riley said. They both stay silent, and all that is heard is Clive opening the door. They exchange a few words before the door shuts and Fred is now inside. Confused, the boys looked at each other in slight disbelief before stomping out the burning roach and going inside. The tube TV plays reruns of The Honeymooners while white static interrupts it every couple of seconds. Jacob points the camera at Riley before covering him with a blanket and going to bed. Timestamp 8:54 p.m. The footage quickly cuts to Riley holding the camera and trying to wake up Jacob. Dude, wake up." Jacob starts opening his eyes. "Arg, what?" "You have to hold the camera light. I forgot to let Shiloh in and I can't find him," Riley pleads. Okay, calm down. He's a smart dog. He probably is hiding somewhere warm," Jacob tells Riley. Timestamp 12:14 a.m. The next shot is the two boys walking through the forest beside the farm, and the light from the handycam illuminates their feet, and Riley is yelling, "Shiloh?" in hopes he'll come running up as he usually does, but call out after call out and whistles starting to tire out Riley's voice. Taking a break, Riley cups his face, slouches down in silence, and lets everything out in bated, choked up cries into his palms. Jacob, alerted, says, "Wait, listen." All that is heard through the fuzzy audio that parallels silence and all dated footage is a lone, faraway cry. That's him crying. Riley says, "Come on, let's go." And they run toward the sound of Shiloh's yelps. Branches and tall grass are flattened as they tromp through the rough terrain, and the cries for help only become louder and more painful every step they take. "We're so close, I swear he's around here." The boys frantically look around as Shiloh pleads and barks in their exact vicinity. The wind pushing the tree branches around caused Jacob to point the camera up at the branches and call out, "Shiloh." From out of shot, Riley is heard screaming, crying, "Oh my God." Once Jacob pans the camera towards where Riley is pointing, the source of the painful yelps is seen. The shot, being short with an abrupt end, forced me to back up the blurry footage frame by frame, examining what they saw. Bloody flesh and fur were strung from branch to branch. What used to be a dog but now lies above in the trees as a crying accordion-like befoul of gore and guts in front of his owners. The worst part about this haunting piece of footage was that no matter how stretched and torn apart Shiloh's body was, he was still living. Barking, yelping, kicking, and twitching, they had to run back to get help. Jacob sets down the camera on their table as they stumble inside, and Riley collapses on the floor yelling into the ground. "It's okay, man, we'll get Clive to get a ladder and we'll drive to the nearest vet," Jacob says in the attempt of comfort. Before Jacob opens the door to get help, he stops as an uncanny bark is heard from just outside the door. "What the fuck?" Jacob quickly grabs the camera and desperately tries to point it out the foggy basement window to see if the impossible became possible, and Shiloh was back outside waiting to come in. As Jacob clicks the photograph option on the camera, the barking gets deeper and growling is heard, demanding its entry. Riley jumps up to let him in, and Jacob quickly stops him after he's seen the photo. "Whatever is out there isn't Shiloh. I've tried developing the photo and will attach it below if possible." Timestamp 1:52 a.m. The barking continues and only gets more guttural and almost sounds like an impersonation. Like someone trying their best to act like a dog. Fist-like banging and long scratches are heard on the door and last, until the sun comes up, torturing Riley and Jacob's psyche. The next morning comes and Jacob walks out of his room to Riley lying on the couch, clutching Shiloh's leash. "Hey man, how are you doing?" Jacob said, treading lightly, though Riley stayed silent. Clive knocked on the outside and Jacob walked up the stairs and opened the doors as Clive was about to knock again. Cutting right to the chase, "Clive, Riley's dog passed away last night, and when we came to get you..." Jacob started to tear up and cry talking about last night. Clive didn't seem confused but worried, inhaled deeply and turned around screaming at the cloud, "You didn't need the dog, you evil bastard." Riley finally got up and started to take out his grief on the only plausible cause in his head, Clive. "What the fuck are you yelling at, old man?" Riley wiped the dried streams from his face. "What took my dog and did that?" "Oh God." Riley breaks down again. Clive, left in distress, huffing and puffing, looked at Riley, walked down the stairs and put his hand on his shoulder. "I'm so sorry, Riley." Aside from their brief conversation about movies, this was the only slice of sane humanity I've seen so far throughout these tapes. Riley stands up and demands the car keys, and Jacob tosses them into his waiting hands, walks past them both and comes to an odd, eerie realization. Where the driveway once was, hundreds of trees have hidden it. "What the fuck is going on?" Riley said as he took the keys back out of his ignition. "It was right here, the driveway was right here." "Clive, what are you doing to us?" Riley demanded. I don't know. This isn't what usually happens, I don't know." The timestamp jumps telling me they've been taking the day off from doing chores around the farm and instead sitting down and listening to music in the basement. It's night time and they've broken into their liquor stock. God, I just wish I didn't. Riley stammers and Jacob cuts him off. "You couldn't have done anything, man. I forgot him out there," Riley said with shame hanging over his voice. "We all forget things sometimes," Clive said. "I once had a best friend who accompanied me. They just can't let anyone be happy if they're not appeased. I forgot him once, and if I could beg them I would, but getting close means no one would be left to take care of them. I'm the 1 inch." He raised his shot glass for a cheers, and the boys hesitated before raising their glasses. Jacob and Riley, like any other night, walk outside to smoke, but this time Clive accompanies them. "Boys, this farm plays tricks on your eyes from time to time," Clive says as he slightly stumbles up the stairs. "That's what I get for teaching you boys." "Teaching us what?" Jacob asked. "Trickery. If you know the tricks, you know it more than it knows itself." Riley pipes up, exhaling smoke. "Dude, what are you talking about?" Clive laughs and the boys join along. "Haha, sometimes I don't even know." Jacob stares into the distance and it draws attention away from the laughter, and Clive calls out into the darkness, "Fred? Is that you?" The boys' eyes adjust and Jacob is sure to point the camera at whatever Clive is calling out to. A subtle silhouette is seen and Clive calls out again, "Fred, what are you doing out here?" The figure makes itself known, walking towards the three of them with high knees as if he's goose-stepping, but the closer it got the more odd its movement was. Taking big exaggerated steps but not using its feet. What appears to be Fred is walking on his ankles with his feet folding at every step, and then it happens. It started barking. Freaking out, they run back and lock the door from the inside, which seems smart at first until the sound of chains run along the outside of the door and the sound of a lock clicks and drops on the metal. Timestamp 11:43. Sitting in the basement suite living room, barking surrounds the house as if there are hundreds of people pretending to yipe and bark. Jacob says, "What about the door up to your house, Clive?" "I boarded it up after I caught you peeping," Clive said accusatively. "I wasn't peeping, oh my God. Can we just run up and break it down?" Jacob asked. "We can try and break it down, but you two can't follow me inside," Clive replies. "Clive, we need to get out of here," Riley yells. Clive reluctantly walks up the stairs and they each take turns bashing their shoulders against the door. The camera falls out of Jacob's jacket and tumbles down the stairs. The surrounding sound of barking and yelling quickly dissipates. No, that's it. "You've done it," Clive says in defeat. "How long have you been recording?" The boys didn't answer until Clive slammed the side of his fist into the door, just breaking the deadbolt of its last sliver of security. Almost every day, I think," Jacob admits. In a rage, Clive lunges at Jacob and he ducks, his hands stuck in a choking position. Clive slams into the concrete wall with tears in his eyes. "You've killed everything I've worked for, you idiot." Jacob and Riley run back down the stairs and pick up the camera. They look up the stairs ready to defend themselves from whatever manic attack Clive is capable of. He's not there. All that's heard is bottles smashing and his front door slamming. They run up the stairs and expect the worst, taking their last step inside, creaking open the door. The image of upstairs lived dormant in the boy's head, believing there could be unspeakable horrors that lay above where they slept. It was a lack thereof. The absence of living plagued the hollow, thin walls, preoccupying a statue being bundled together with rope and twine. Hundreds of papers are scattered around it, the living space add being a few of the pieces. A few cameras lay smashed beside a pile of backpacks and all kinds of different clothes. The boys examine the statue closer and shine the handycam light on it, revealing it's rooted into the floorboards, and the closer they get, between the sticks gaps are stained brown and red. "It stinks," Riley says. Gunshots are heard alongside Clive yelling at the wind, walking into the trees. The boys run out to find him. "You didn't have to take him. I gave you everything and you took him." Clive screams and growls obscenities at the forest as lone rifle rounds ring through. "Clive, what are you doing?" Riley yells at him. Leave, yells Clive. "But where?" Trees surrounded the area, even the driveway leading to the road. "It occurred to me soon he wasn't talking to them." "We have to go, Clive, come on," Jacob pleads. "Fuck him, dude, we have to leave." Riley tries pulling Jacob towards the car until they lay their eyes and the lens on what Clive was scared of this whole time. Clive screamed drunken gibberish and was quickly interrupted when an odd structure started to appear from within the trees. Its legs were many and its large body did not match its other skinny amenities. The boys stay quiet as this behemoth of sticks tromp towards Clive. Jacob tries zooming in to reveal its details, and what's pictured in this blurry pixelated footage is long black roots acting as hundreds of hands and legs, causing a smorgasbord of different limbs being wooden and other pieces of humans intertwining each other. When Jacob pans up, he tries to hold it in but lets out its wearing Shiloh. Draped over its rugged and bumpy mass was a pelt made of Riley's best friend. What are you talking about? Riley says. I don't know. Before they could make anything else out, a fatal swipe crunches through Clive's shoulder and down to his hip, killing him. What the fuck, Riley says under his breath as the two of them break into a sprint, being as light-footed as possible, Jacob being a few steps infant of Riley. Roots plague the ground and start flowing through the dirt like eels in water. Jacob trips and drops the camera. They both hide behind separate trees, the camera facing the being that towered above them only maybe 100 feet away, looking in the boys' direction. Riley discreetly grabs the camera and passes it to Jacob to make a run at getting over to him. Okay, I'm gonna run to your tree. 3, 2, 1 inch, and Riley breaks for it towards Jacob, but as his first step connects with the ground, he's taken into the forest so quick I'm surprised the frames could catch it. Jacob covered his mouth in horror when 1 second he saw his brother ready to run and escape together, and the next, he's gone, and the last thing heard from Riley is audible screams of help and terror. Though the microphone is old, it still picked up the sound of soaking driftwood being snapped under immense pressure and force. A slosh of liquid is heard splashing the ground, and Riley's screams have dissipated. Without another second of waiting, Jacob runs for it. Timestamp 2:02 a.m. In the last shot, I was both surprised and expecting. The camera is set down, facing a bunch of other objects on a table while people walk around picking things up and putting them down. Then I picked it up. I asked how much for the camera, and he said just take it. Now knowing what I do, I was at Jacob's table at a local swap meet. I went back to find him the next weekend, but no luck. I drove to where the Dogwood Farms were. There was nothing but undeveloped land. No houses, barns, or basements or cars. Just trees. Everywhere. Do you think Dogwood Family Farms ever truly existed, or was it something else entirely? Would you keep watching the tapes, or would you destroy them?